Okay, so we are back after that short break. Now we have people joining us on LinkedIn. We have people on Facebook. We do have people also joining us on Twitter, and we are live once more. The YouTube is a little bit. I can see people are coming in. I can begin to receive chats, and um, but people are still unable to get connected to LinkedIn, to YouTube. So I just want to get that fixed. Let them know that we are working on it. Okay, so I do see that we are now on YouTube. YouTube is now working. Well, I'm excited to be here. I do apologize for that delay. And once again, because our subscribers are beginning to come in and YouTube issue has been resolved, so I will do the introduction again. Okay, so my name is Florence Idowu once again, and I am the moderator for this program brought to you by Bavarde Talent Solutions. So today we'll be looking into a controversial issue that has to do with diversity in promotion and transfer structures. We're taking a look into away from diversity in recruitment, but now in internal recruiting system, we're looking into talent management and redeployment of talent in an organization. Today, I have with me wonderful speakers and diversity and inclusion experts, subject matter experts in various organizations and industry. I will bring to you shortly our speakers so we can get to know about them. So we do have full speaking three, actually. Okay, I'm also a speaker. So we do have three wonderful subject matter experts with me today, and I would allow them to do the introduction. But before they do that, because they can speak more about themselves, but before they do that, I will do a quick introduction and you can get to know who we have in our show today. So I will try to pronounce your name very well this time around, Kovana. Kwabana. Kwabana, thank you. So we have me on my right, we have Kwabana Marcos Collins. We have Danielle Stephenson, and I have Lorisa Wells. So I have these people, they're all diversity, inclusion, equity, and belongingness experts, DEIB. They are all experts subject matters from different industries and organizations. Kwabena is from Qualls and is a diversity and inclusion advisor, and is also taking up the role of a diversity recruiter, which I do know. Trust me, I was a diversity recruiter in the Science Museum, and I know what that job entails. And I have with me Danielle Stephenson. Danielle Stephenson is a program strategist in specialized in diversity, equity, and inclusion. She does quite a number of consulting, which is very amazing because now she works directly with organizations looking into ways that they can strategize, bring in diversity strategy in their own programs. And I have with me Larissa Wells, and Larissa Wells does something very amazing, very, and then she's gonna bring in a spice because we don't really talk about real estate, but Larissa is okay. The title is quite long. She's a equity and inclusion expert in urban planning, and she's also a trainer, a diversity trainer. She's and a facilitator. So I would give the mic starting from Bavana. It's gonna give a brief introduction about what he does, who is he, and we look forward to having you. Let's go, Kevin.
Thank you so much. So happy to be here. I'm humbled to be on this panel with such accomplished DEI subject matter experts and to just be able to share all of our thoughts and concepts with all of our communities across all of the networks. Currently, I am an executive recruiter with Coles, but I also came into Coles as a member of our diversity and inclusion team, which is interesting because I've always thought that the best DEI strategy is to have DEI experts in the business. Again,
Mm.
because a lot of the work that we're talking about is about culture change within an organization. And we can't have just these one off siloed activities. And so now moving into the talent acquisition side of calls is really that manifestation of elevating the DNI programming or thoughts into the organization. My background is in initially in education, cultural foundations of education is what I got my master's in. Always been into culture as a product of a multicultural household with when you think about a lot of the different metrics of what we now call diversity. I grew up, my mother is white from South Milwaukee. My father is black from Southern United States, Mississippi. I have a lesbian sister who's been married for 20 years. I grew up in an Afrocentric Catholic church. In my lifetime, my father, my sister, and her wife are all Marine veterans. My father is a Vietnam veteran. So I've always just really, as a child, had to bring into the notion of learning about other people because I didn't know what my own identity was, having such a broad background. I also grew up in a Puerto Rican neighborhood, so for a long time I used to say, "Call me Marco," So again, I this is not just the work that I do. This is the life that I live, and I'm so eager to be able to share some of those stories and my thoughts and the research I've done over the years with my fellow panelists and all those who are following us today.
Thank you very much for that detailed introduction. It's nice to get to know you more than the professional angle, and thank you very much for sharing that. So I would say that I'd let Danielle go and Larissa following the faces I have on my screen.
Okay.
Okay, Danielle, let's have you.
Well, that was an incredible introduction. Mine is not that fabulous. But I really started this work in 1997. And it was
Mm,
a result of a loss of business. It was a $10 million account that our company lost. And I was in the staffing industry. And so they said, "You're not doing enough in diversity for us."
mm,
And so it wasn't a reaction to something that polarized the world. It was a small like business impact. So my focus has been making the diversity work tied to the business strategy. And being in Seattle, there's not much diversity in terms of Black Americans. I think right now we're 6% of the total population, which isn't a lot. As I grew up in Dallas, where we're like 23%. So I'm used to being the only one, and used to not only being the only one in this role, but being kind of the only one that looks like me in some of the companies or in some of the offices. So it's really for me. I've worked in a lot of different industries and helped organizations move forward But also, I'm not sugarcoating it. I don't try to make it a kumbaya. Can we all get along? I've worked in nonprofits. I've supported governmental agencies, but primarily my work has been in the private sector with publicly traded companies. So it is about their business, and taking them to task and making sure that what we do doesn't impact this organization's ability to operate long term.
Hmm. That was a great one there, getting to know how you work from the staffing industry. And that is so correct because I've also worked in staffing agencies, and trust me, we rarely talk about diversity except when we become the diverse supplier. So
Sure.
that's a very good one. That's a very good one. So I'm going to hand over the mic now to Larissa. Larissa, please do introduce yourself. I'm looking forward to your introduction because diversity in real estate we've been planning. It's something to talk about.
It's kind of something to laugh about at the same time because I actually went, first of all, my name's Larissa Wells, and thank you very much for having me. Um, I'm really honored, and because this is like you said, it's a controversial topic, but it is one that is long overdue. So I went back to college later in life. I'm really glad that I did. Went to San Francisco State Gators um, for urban studies and planning, and which encompasses 5 areas of policy: social policy, transportation, housing, land usage, public health, and public education. So I can go into any one of those realms. But this was 2010 to 2013. So as I was in class, I realized that I was the only one that looked like me and female
Mm,
um, for the whole 2 years, in upper division that I was there. And I'm like, well, okay, I'm in the right place because no wonder our areas do not resemble um, our sense of being or sense of belonging because we
I'm in the
have
right
people that
place
are planning for
because
us. No wonder our areas do not Oh, we have people that are planning for us that don't talk to us, don't come to us, don't do anything. So anyway, and I jumped straight into grad school and learned about public admin. So that's what my master's is in, and in public manage. I mean, public admin with a minor in public management and policy analysis. So I am
mm,
dealing with policy all the time, numbers, policy, numbers, policy. I fell into this work. I thought but it seems like I've been conditioned to do this work. I've grown up in predominantly white schools all of my life. I noticed the difference in the teachings, the difference in the mindset, the difference in the biases. And so when it comes to businesses and especially government, I'm understanding the systemic racism that began and that continues to flow on why we do not have promotions to executive and managerial positions. It depends on it. So if it's Parks and Rec, yeah, we'll put you up there. But when it comes to a serious decision making position as a director or an executive, say urban planning, where you are honestly planning for communities, society, and nations as a whole, we are not there. And it's not just African American people. I choose to call myself Black. I'm
mm,
not going to continue to let people define me. I am Black, and I am okay with that, unapologetic. So I
Yes.
but in moving across these different nonprofits, government, for profit, what is it and why is it that people of all hues, cultures, ethnicities, mindsets, beliefs, older, younger, why are we not there? Because of schemas. And so perhaps I'll talk about that later.
mm. Thank you very much for that solid introduction. And you already went into the topic even before we started. I'm very impressed. Thank you very much for the introduction. So, this is exactly what we'll be going into. We'll be talking about diversity in promotion, how we can incorporate diversity. We all have diversity policies now. Organizations are just busy doing that, creating policies, creating strategies. But what have they done to actually implement the strategies? Those are the topics that we want to dive into today. So this is how we're going to do it. We're going to allow our subscribers to also ask questions. They may have burning questions that they want to ask, and I had to reshare the link. It looks like our data wasn't transferring to the LinkedIn to the YouTube that I created, but I cannot edit on LinkedIn. So I had to recreate a new link and let them send them there, so I can see that more people are joining in now. So this is what we're going to do: is we'll give them more minutes. Let me check in. We have to check in because those are the people who want to talk, and we want to bring in this awareness to that. And I'm very sure that our next episode won't be like this. I did a test run; it was fine, and now just YouTube just decided to do what they want to do. Okay,
It's
so just give me
technology. That's how it happens. In this
yeah.
day, we've all been there. We've all lived those same scenarios. So
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I know I have.
I've been sitting on the table since 7 just to make sure everything was well set and ready to go. But YouTube decided to give me a shocker. Good. Well, the good thing is we do have it already streaming live on LinkedIn. We have it streaming live on Facebook. We also have it streaming live on Twitter, which is a very good one. We'll have it all in the major social media as much as we can. But we'll just give more people from LinkedIn that are already connected to our YouTube the opportunity not to miss this program, and they can watch live.
Oh, I want to add one more thing. I'm from the Bay Area, California. Hoping this
Okay.
is okay. Just to give a little context of people seem to think that California is so diverse. It's just a wonderful, wonderful place to be.
Mm. Yes, I remember we did have a conversation and you said that that's not true. I would like to learn more about that.
along
Exactly.
those lines, I just throw out a number. Since they're throwing out these different nuances and breaking perceptions, many people don't know that Milwaukee, which is in Wisconsin, is
Mm.
40% black. And so it is one of the blackest cities in the country. But it also has its challenges with segregation and things of that sort, and all those inequities. I am excited that in the recent years there is a chief equity officer that is housed out of the city hall, and there's they have a diversity recruiter, and they have employee resource groups within the city, which is one of the larger employers, having 8,000 employees across the city limits. So we're making some progress within our great city, which is home to many global Fortune 500, Fortune 100 organizations. So
Okay, so now I will dive into the questions I have printed out. But the very first one is the same is the topic, which is promoting diversity in promotion and transfer structures. So that is going to be topic. That's going to be the first question. We need to know. So how can organization promote diversity in their promotion structure and transfer?
so I'll jump in real quick if that's okay. And I will just throw out that again, as I alluded to earlier, a lot of it has to do with culture, and there's a lot of different research around the successes or failures of specific programs that target BIPOC populations and different gender populations for kind of creating that bigger pipeline within the organization internally,
Hmm.
and how there are some negative ramifications for those programs as well, being that it singles people out, it creates an assumption that there's something that needs to be fixed with those targeted groups. So a lot of the research that is coming out in recent years is speaking to more of the create opportunities for different people to interact with each other, so they can look at people from as people and look at the human side of things, as opposed to, because or naturally most people are going to lump a person in with a group. And so any of those stereotypes that come with those, or prejudices or biases that come with that group, are going to affect that person positively or negatively. And so changing a culture where you have more leaders being able to um, connect with those who are not in leadership roles, those individual contributors or those mid-level managers and leaders, so that they get to know them as people, and then also so that those interactions over time will dispel those prejudices and biases that they have, because a lot of those biases are based upon, you know, things that they have not personally experienced, maybe things that they've seen on TV, on YouTube, or any of those different social media outlets. It's things that they're being fed, not necessarily their own personal
Mm,
interactions.
mm. That's a very good one. Larissa, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, and thank you so much for your response. So I'm going to say, throughout time, all the mental images that we are bombarded with, which are many, start to shape and form our conscious and unconscious biases. Many times, I believe that when we are in managerial positions and in the authoritative position to actually promote someone or to transfer someone in. I'm going to use Raven Simone as an example. She
Mm,
was on The View one good day and said, I would never hire somebody with the name Watermelon or Watermelonina or something like that.
mm,
She received a lot of backlash for that comment. And so then that makes me wonder, those that are in those positions, when you look at someone's name um, or the area that they may live, what identifications or schemas have been developed in your brain to make you think of a person in the manner that you may think. Many times when people are in these positions, they are looking for someone just like themselves. And since we seem to have the majority of the people that are in these positions, white and male,
mm,
they may be looking for someone that has the same concept, white and male, and bring them in. When you think of women, either she's going to be considered aggressive rather than assertive, or she's going to have children and we don't have time for that, or, there's so many mental images that a person has already. For example, if you come in and you see a chair and it has a flat back and it has the arms, you already know what to do with that chair. Same thing when it comes to people. When we have these images of, let's say, African Americans that are always running from the police, and I blame the media a lot on this, but we also have to decipher what's real and what's not. If you don't expand your globe of network of people, then how is it that you're going to possibly understand different ethnicities and cultures rather than just white culturalism that we happen to have all been brought up in if we grow up within the United States of America? Now, this goes back to Woodrow Wilson with all of the segregation and Birth of a Nation movie and the concept of people of color, specifically black people. But then now we start thinking of people that are Muslim, people that are Asian. If we see a person that's Asian, your mind thinks, yes, they're good at math. Well, I used to teach, and guess what? That's not the case. That's not the case. It's not that they're inherently good at math, it's because they are made to study. And so we have to start to decipher and check our biases. And what have I been taught all of this time? And am I looking for somebody just like me? Is that really what I want within this organization? Everyone that thinks alike looks alike, because you're not going to get anywhere as an organization. You're not going to grow. It's going to be business as usual. Okay, so that's just my brief take on that right now.
And I would similarly, I would say, because my entrance into this workspace wasn't as a result of, a 9-minute video or something like that. It was because our company lost $10 million, and I was hired after that loss. And so, what was interesting is when I went to the client and asked what happened, they said, you're the first person to ever follow up. And I know that I didn't know anything about workplace diversity at all. I realized I looked the part, but I had strong industry experience. So that got me in the door. But from there, I just used some basics understandings of what went wrong. And so when I brought that back to our organization, we revamped some things. And then I talked to our VP of diversity, that was a corporate employee. And he said, this company's not ready. I've been here 13 years. Good luck. You have the support of your regional VP, do what you do. And that was really disheartening. And so one of the
mm,
things that I quickly learned was that perhaps he didn't understand, even though he'd been there much longer than I had been, um, the nature of the business. You can spend a lot of time on changing people's viewpoints, and working on that, but we know there's not a lot of retention in companies. I think it's what, 24, maybe 18 to 24 months the average. And so by the time you've reached this population, maybe particularly if they're younger, they've already left the company. And so
Mhm.
what I think that what I focused on is, we lost this money, how are we going to make it up? And then the
Mm.
person who told us to go away actually went to another, the world's largest software company. I think they're still that company. So she went there. And so we didn't know that. And that was the next company we wanted to do business with. And so, just going and asking a question. So I brought that back to our organization. And as I've moved and worked at other organizations, I've started with the business, focus first. Looking at if they're business like B2C, like consumer services, looking at what's the purchasing power of these groups that don't necessarily look like the people who work here. I
Mhm.
focus on, you can have your thoughts and your beliefs, but your behavior has to be aligned with supporting this organization. And when that is in conflict, you're going to impact this company's ability to do business. And so, with that, I've been fortunate enough to be hired by operations people with more dotted lines to HR, because it seems like they want results. And when I have been hired, it's been that HR has never really, gotten us any diverse talent. When we found it, we've had to use executive search firms. So one of the things that I've said when I made the leap to the corporate environment is that you need to look at your HR department. I think it was Einstein or someone that said, you cannot use the same, I guess, brain power or the same thinking that got you into this situation to get you out. And now what we're seeing is that, often, organizations, the head of HR, who's maybe been there for years, is now the chief diversity officer. And then
Mhm.
if you look at this company where they haven't made much progress, you have to look within. And when we're talking about promotions and transfers, those are usually our HR business partners. Rarely are there recruiters, in that conversation, and they use often a process, a 9 box, to look at who's new in their career, who has potential, and they go through this level of assessment. One of the things that I've done to shift is that, let's just run some data. Let's look at race and gender, pay, actual pay, their start date, and what movement that they've had. And I've given this to operations leaders so that when they see this whole bunch of, uh, uh, the BIPOC community at the lower levels, and then they can ask why, and then they can ask that question to their HR business partner, and say, if I have all this talent, presumably talent because they've been here a while, at the bottom ranks, why are they not moving up? And so that
Mhm.
what we hear is, well, they're not interested, or they just don't have it, and then the senior leader can ask, why don't they? What have you done to get them there? And so being able to arm what we continue to say, white males in this, privilege in the higher leadership, giving them the tools so they can take action has really made a difference. Now, I'm not saying it's going to work with all, because some really don't get it, and I'm fine with that. And I think organizations need to be fine with that. Then move on to one that does. Now, if that leader, irrespective of color, because sometimes we have, this idea that if we're the only ones, we kind of want to always be the only ones. I've seen
Mhm.
people of color not be champions as well. And so with that, I find the ones who will be a champion, and then, they in turn can amplify what we're trying to do. Now, if I continue to get roadblocks, then I typically work from the top down as opposed to the bottom up, because you can always get stopped. But if I have the ear of, the senior leadership, and, some mentor, and sometimes these are private conversations, no one knows that we even interact, and I tell him or her, usually a him, what's going on. They're having conversation, and what I say is, I'm not here to try to change the way you think. I don't care what you think. I care how you behave, and that's what we care about. And unless you're Catholic, your thoughts might really want to get you in trouble. So, that's made the biggest difference. And I use the data, and I say, let's stop double dipping in when we say women and then a woman of color, you can count her twice. I said, no, if you're counting women, it's European women, we've got, Latinas, we've got Black, we've got Asian. Let's count that way. And so if
Mhm.
you're when organizations say, oh, we have, so many, I don't use them. I'm going to use it right now, but I typically don't use the word minority. When we have, women who are not of European descent, when you start looking at who they are, they're usually not a lot of Black and Latin women, or and Indigenous American women. There are no. So I challenge the organization as well. What are you doing for these groups that are underrepresented? And I really take the EEO, um, that reporting, and just task down from there. Of let's look at every rung of this, of all 13 categories, and see where we are and why we're there.
Hmm.
And not a special program, but let's ask the question to our HR folks. Let's look inward first before we say that there are no people that are interested in moving up.
Wow, that was a great one, Danielle. You really went into the issue itself. And there's just one thing that you mentioned that I want to highlight. You talked about culture, you talked about attitude, and you also talked about leadership. The same thing goes with Larissa and Kovana Collins. And but there's one thing I wrote down because I'm definitely taking note too. I'm a diversity recruiter, talent acquisition consultant, and these are things that I do on a day-to-day basis. So I'm not just here to anchor or host and moderate the show. I'm also here to learn. And we're beginning to have some questions chime in and more people come in the program. So I want our listeners to know that I will be taking notes of the questions and we would definitely go into there. We'll provide answers as much as we can. But now back to what you mentioned. You talked about culture and you talked about policies and you talked about leadership. So this my question now goes into what are we going to say? Because now I have beginning to understand that we do have culture and of course policy clash. There's something I call the ladder movement. That's one of my new model when I'm talking about diversity. The ladder movement, we look upwards, down, top down approach, or the down top approach. So it depends on how you want to go. You want to go up down, or you want to go down up. And one thing is that I know about, yes, practices and policies when we're looking actually what we do and what we want to do, and sometimes even the plan of action do not correlate with action with what we want to achieve. So can we talk more about this, the clashes, the differences in the policies and also in the practice, and how can organization rectify these issues going forward?
I think that's a really great question, because organizations, um, everyone usually has a tagline: "We're an equal opportunity employer," blah, 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 blah. However, in their practice, I have a strong recruiting background. And so one of the things that um, I've stopped, or in companies I worked for, or I've recommended when I'm consulting, is this notion that if you've earmarked a candidate or internal candidate to apply for a job, stop posting them on the Friday afternoon, having the ideal candidate apply, and then closing it by Monday. So that
Mm,
meant you're not really giving equal opportunity. It looks as if you are, but if no one knows the position's actually open, we need to stop, doing those sorts of things. I think also organizations now, when the claim is that they want diversity, however, they're making a requirement for candidates to have a degree. And then if they don't check the box that they've had a degree, it automatically knocks them out. Now, there are organizations that um, say that they're open and a degree is not required, yet when a recruiter is looking, they're going to pass over the candidates that didn't check that box, even though that candidate didn't get an automatic declination. And I would say internally, often what I find leaders are looking at the, where they went to school, uh, who they if they get a recommendation from someone else in their peer group at work, that candidates brought forward. But if you've not given exposure to uh, candidates of color, internal employees, then they're never going to get that recommendation. So I think that you definitely do have to look at your policies, and I think a strong D&I person has to know how the recruiting process and that function works within an organization, and how those meetings that they're having to identify the high potential employees, how those are conducted and who's conducting them, because otherwise you're going to get the same thing that you've always gotten. And we see that a lot. Companies make these big announcements externally, but when you see the internal movement, it's the same. Um, it's the same old, same old.
mm, mm. What do you think about it, Larissa and Covenant?
I'm sorry. Did you say were you talking to me?
Yes. So what's your opinion about this? When we're talking about the clashes or the differences in the policy that we have on this day, when we're talking about promotion now, and internal recruitment, because promotion also still has to do with recruitment, because you have to bring those people in. Either you transfer, you do the cross application or the redeployment of talent, or you bring those people in from one stage to another. It's still promotion, which also still has to do with recruitment. So now, but we look into this and we see that there is difference, a huge difference, a clash in the policy, in the practice. But how can this be rectified? How can organization look into this, rectify the issue going forward? Kobina, do you want to go? Larissa, Larissa, you're muted.
I'm muted.
Okay, I can hear you now. Please go on.
Yeah. Um, for me, what is your goal? Start there. What is your end result, and then work backwards.
Mm,
Um, so I think that again, if you have a goal, this is what I'm looking for. This is what we need in order to accomplish this particular task.
mm-hmm,
Then you can start there and then work backwards to the means, on how to get there. Again, if for me, because I come from primarily government and or education, which is still government, and I see how policies from past still exist today unconsciously.
mm-hmm,
So, for example, within government, um, there is a scientific management method that they utilize, and it's also other companies like DuPont that also utilize the same thing. You don't ask questions; it's just this check, 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 check. Like you said, those check those boxes. If those boxes are not there, then you just get passed over. Once we understand where it comes from, I don't think many of us want to take the time to understand how things came to be.
mm,
How can you fix something if you don't know how it came to be?
mm-hmm,
It's very difficult. So I have actually taken the time to go back and say, okay, this is where this comes from. Now we can start to knock this out piece by piece by piece. Now we're also talking about color a lot, and that's a social construct. But what I will say is we don't talk about younger and older people and how older people are really being passed over. Like we hear it with the president right now. Oh, he's too old. But in other countries, the older you get, the more revered you are. You know what I mean? You are honored because of wisdom in that life, and but people here in the United States will throw you away. Just the same as an older woman. Oh my gosh, no, she must be looking for a pension. Throw her away. So it's just we really must, in my very humble opinion, which is never humble, um, just what is your goal? It to me is so simple, but as I've continued to go through implicit and unconscious bias courses myself, I
mm-hmm,
keep doing them. I keep
mm,
doing them. And just the other day I went through another one, the same one, but something finally clicked. So you can't just take one. It
mm,
has to be just like those mental images of all different kinds of people have been programmed into your mind. We have to deprogram them,
mm,
and so sometimes we're going to have to take things over and over again in order to get it. I finally start getting, I realize I got some biases myself,
yeah,
some
exactly.
ugly ones, you know what I mean? And I got to do something about it. So I have to challenge myself,
Mm,
and that takes courage. So as long as the first three things that you need are honesty,
mm.
open mindedness, and willingness. You get those three, you on your way.
Hmm, that's a great one. That is a great one. Kavina, before you go in, I just want you to, I want our listeners to know that you can still watch this on Facebook. It's going to be a recorded session. It is recorded, so you can have access to this after the show. We have this streaming live on Facebook. We have it streaming live on YouTube, LinkedIn, and of course on Twitter. And we hope that you can keep sending in questions. I do have some questions which we'll be reading towards the end. And I also look forward to some questions because I'm seeing some amazing questions right now. I will be able to provide answers to your questions as much as possible. And I now hand over the mic to Kuvina.
Thank you. So first of all, I just you ladies are hitting some wonderful points, and I just want to touch on a couple of those. Not to um, not to add to what you've already said because you've done that obviously uh, better than I could, but it makes me think of a couple different things.
Hmm.
Danielle, when you talked about like even when we run into these situations where we have um, underrepresented leaders in positions to make hiring decisions and things like that, and they don't. And there's a book that's out there by a gentleman by the name of Porter Broswell. It's called "Let Them See You," and he comes from the corporate background. He talks about this complex or this situation where when you have somebody of color, say a black man or a black woman in this leadership role, there's an extra pressure. You know, sometimes you might call it part of that black tax of if I hire somebody that looks like me, am I going to be judged for hiring somebody that looks like me because they look like me? Is am I going to discredit myself for hiring another light skinned mixed kid that identifies as a black man, as a straight cisgender black man? Am I going to be penalized for that down the road, especially if they don't succeed at the level that would have wanted them to? And so people in those roles sometimes end up where they become paralyzed and don't make those decisions. And it's not because they don't want to, but they're afraid of the consequences of making that, and they don't feel empowered by the organization globally to be able to make free decisions of their own um, assessments. Another thing that Larissa, that you talked about, there was two things, and specifically as we're talking about the difference of practice versus policy in the promotional space. And when you think about attire, just as simple as that, you know, black people, Latino people, Asian people, in many cases, we like more color, brighter colors. But if you have leaders who are using a prototype of what it looks like to be promoted, those are not going to fit into that prototype. And
Hmm.
so those leaders are going to have to understand that that practice, the policy says we're not looking at people's attire, but the practice is that prototype bias. That practice is we want somebody that looks like the person that just left that role because that's our
Hmm.
new standard. And if that person is a straight white man or a straight white woman, uh, then we're going to probably be looking for another straight white man, a straight white woman, because that is the prototype. And so that's where you find this challenge of practice versus policy in promotions internally. And the last thing that Marissa, you talked about, and I was just reading this article earlier today, it is on trainings. And when, in particular, when we make people make them do trainings, and this goes to human nature. If you somebody tells you you need to do it, there's some type of gut reaction to push back against that. And so the recommendations and some of the new research is to don't make it mandatory because it empowers people to say that I'm an advocate for diversity because I'm choosing to do this training. I'm not doing it because I was told to. And then on top of that, those trainings alone, one time, are only going to be good for up to 2 days. And then they go back to status quo. And so, Larissa, your point about continual education and continual uh, introspection of where you are in your own journey is incredibly powerful and important to that dynamic of changing that policy into your practice. So if there are good policies in play, but if the practice is contradictory to that, in order to get to that policy, we have to continually work on ourselves to be in alignment with those policies, in particular to when it comes to the people and human capital within our organizations.
Wow, that was a great point. Actually, great points were mentioned over there. And I would say that I have those questions that just quickly formed in my mind. When we're talking about the policies, we talked about good opportunities to be given to everyone, equal opportunity to everyone. regardless of your color, regardless of who left that position. And I'm also aware that the team always look into filling positions, bringing new skills, the skill that they are looking for, or the skill that the team is missing. And now we're looking to give this opportunity to just a particular set of people, which is very biased and partial and very frustrating, annoying, especially if you have a person of color or even just any other person on the team actually interested in that position, and you're just like, oh, we need a skill, we need this person, we need this industry, and now you take away the opportunity from the current group, or you're taking away this opportunity from the interested participants. So now I'm going to ask just this question. So now, what is the best practice? The best practice, what are the best practices for now deliberately seeking out candidates to promote? You're looking at best practice, want to talk about best practice to candidates now. When we seek out, we're deliberately seeking out candidates that can promote diversity, not just in color, not just in shade or
Right.
ethnicity. Because one thing I just say as a DEI consultant too is, even if I'm looking for diverse candidates, I make sure they are qualified candidates. By the way, Bavarde Talent Solution provides diverse candidates to organization. We help you find that diverse candidates that you'll seek, hard to find, top notch, qualified. We make sure it's qualified because it's not just having the mix of colors, it's about having someone that can do the job. So now back to the question is, how do organization, or what are the best practices that organization can employ to deliberately seek out candidates to provide or produce diversity of thoughts or perception?
First of all, let me
Um,
say this. Oh, I'm sorry. I just
oh
got
no,
to
go
say
first.
this. I got to say this.
Yeah, I know this is
Um,
a tough one. This is a sensitive one, so everyone is going to talk about this definitely.
yeah. Let me talk to y'all today. Uh, when I talked about that honesty, open minded, and willingness, I'm talking about honesty with self. You can't be honest with me if you're not honest with yourself on why you make the choices that you make when it comes to promotion and or recruitment. And what I will say is this: equality versus equity. So when there is no equality, equity
Mm,
will come into play. And is it expensive? It is expensive. It will cost you. It will cost you. And so just think about that. And many people think that equality and equity are the same, that they are not mutually exclusive. Um,
Mm.
they are related. But again, where there is no equality, then equity must come into play, and it is quite expensive. It will cost you. I'm sorry, Miss Danielle, go ahead.
Oh no, no, I love this. I think when we're talking about leadership, and I wanted to comment when there are people of color in higher leadership roles and they're afraid to hire. Um, I will say this: there's no shame in my game. That's that slave man mentality and slave woman mentality, and that's also the model minority. These things that I'm the only one, because I can't tell you how many people have been hired from leaders with European descent and walked off with half the company's assets. So that's a cop out. And honestly, I feel like if you've risen to a role, they put you in that position for a reason.
Yes.
And instead of you walking in courage, you've regressed because you want to keep your spot, and so you don't want to make those errors, or you put undue pressure on. If you do go out on a limb and hire someone who looks like you put incredible pressure on that new hire to be this robot here. And I think that we certainly do have biases. I have them, absolutely. But what I don't do is try and bring those into the workplace and dictate how this business should operate when my name's not on the building. And like I said, I've worked for mostly publicly traded companies, and so no one in that building, their names on it. Even if it is, they're publicly traded, so it's not their money. So I think that that's something that's really important. I think, and then looking apart, again, I don't like anybody that works in Seattle. So there is that norm to fit in and be conservative. No, I'm. I'm going to dress appropriately for work, but I'm also from Dallas, and I know everybody thinks what Texas It's a new thing. But the attitude that I have here in the Northwest is definitely a Texan of that. You say what you mean what you say, and you stand in that. And I think that for anyone doing this work, you have to be comfortable with your reputation in this work is more important than your track record at a company. And so many times I see people in these roles and they stand down because it's a great job, it's a great company. I mean, if you look at my LinkedIn, I work for some amazing ones and some that aren't on there because we're consulting, but it's part of it. We are intersecting people's lives and we're supposed to make a difference. And if you know your organization isn't ready, then your job is to get them ready or find one area that is ready and slot people there. And the worst thing you can do is not take a realistic view at your organization, and you're just out here bringing diverse candidates in, and it's a catastrophe for them and for the organization. And then it goes back to reinforcing some of the negative stereotypes that people have had because they haven't been set up for success. And I think that if you can find one leader that's interested and have that real talk, and that's off the if you work in a campus setting or an office, it's away from there, and you're having a beer, or I prefer that, but or a cocktail. But it's not in that office where people have these masks on, and if you're having that real talk and seeing where their head is. And if they can't break from that and have some real talk and real conversations about what their upbringing was like. One of my, I say, good mentor is someone who he joined the company the year I was born, and he grew up in Mississippi. The first thing we talked about was Emmett Till, and I didn't miss a beat because that's the first thing I mentioned. I thought Texas was the South until I worked for this company and went to the South. And he didn't miss a beat. And the conversations we've had and the conversations he was willing to have with internal candidates, which he'd never had before. And this company right now is 122 years old. So those are the things that we have to have that courage, and it is risky to step out there and not train and over and train, because you can train, but then you need to implement some practice changes, which it has to do with how the company behaves, and not be afraid to call it out. It's scary, but it's fun. What's the worst that can happen?
Wow,
Well, in
that's
closing,
that's
all I
very
want to say is
amazing.
because I see that it's of time, but in closing, what I want to say is we have dimmed our light long enough.
Hmm.
Okay, in the words of Nelson Mandela, do not dim your light to make someone else's light shine brighter. And then what has happened is we have allowed ourselves to cower. When I was working for the city of Oakland as a planner, I was only hired because I looked like this,
Hmm.
because they were under fire. Just gonna keep it solid, okay? I saw all of my Asian brothers and sisters sitting over there in accounting because they don't talk back, they don't speak up, and they're in a bubble, okay? I saw African American people over there in Parks and Rec, you know, and so what I'm saying, all in all, is people already have an opinion about you before they see you. Live your life, do your job, do your job, all right? And let the chips fall where they may, because this is going to be a rocky road anyway. We're going to hit a whole lot of speed bumps. And because this is the first time that we are actively and intentionally seeking solutions to a systemic um, uh, 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 devil's highway, if you will, um, that has been going on for hundreds of years. We cannot, and it will not happen overnight, but we must take at least one step forward and continue to have these trainings over and over and over and over. Eventually people gonna say, yeah, okay, let me go check it out. So that's all I have to say about that.
Hmm.
I'll just jump in. One last thing as we close out is, as we talked about, trying to come up with tangible solutions for companies and organizations to uh, learn how to provide opportunities for advancement and promotion for our diverse talent into roles. But there's a nuance, as a lot of companies, a lot of um, BIPOC individuals are just that, they're individual contributors. And oftentimes, in order to be in a leadership role, you need to be able to show that you can lead. Well, it's that nuance of, well, how do I get experience if nobody will give me experience?
Mhm.
One thing that you know, we're doing at Kohl's, but also what other companies are doing is strategically using their ERGs and BRGs and looking at those leaders from those BRGs and ERGs as high potential talent for leadership roles. So you may be an individual contributor in your day to day, but you're a leader. That's another space where you can lead. And for obvious reasons, you can, as an organization, I can look at, our women's BRG for women leaders, and I can, or for women who might be looking to promote. Or if you have an individual contributor who has high potential, we can move forward and add, get them into one of those leadership roles in the BRG and start to teach them those skills in a more organic way so that they are ready for those promotions moving forward.
Mm. Wow, that's a great one. I do remember when we were talking about this conversation, we talked about cultural shifts, and with what Kabana just mentioned now, talking about how do you actually prepare these people to go on to the next journey in their career. There's this question that comes to my mind now is how do we know? How do we know? We talk about diversity candidates. We want these people to move up the ladder. We want these people to be comfortable enough to be able to uh, go to the next stage of your career. Let's say, how do we know that these people are ready, the diverse candidates are ready to proceed to the next stage?
I would say one of the things that I focus on in trying to make to see if someone's ready is do they have the will? Are they interested in it? Because you can't. I often hear no one's ready to have a baby. You just need to decide. There's no good time. So if the person is interested and they have a background, whether it's in our company or somewhere else, have they put themselves out there? Have they been self-directed in their learning and their growing? And so
Mm,
that's a competency I need to see when they're not necessarily coming with the experience that the role calls for. And I think that if you surround them with, and making sure that there's some infrastructure there to support them, then it's absolutely worth a risk. And even if if the company wants to try, let's do this for about 6 months, make it a rotational program so that you can get a variety of people through um, skills building that you wouldn't ordinarily have, in the sense of there may be one opportunity open every 2 or 3 years. Well, if you create a rotational program, you can see a lot of people there and give them that exposure. But I think it's more, you've got to have to spend some time talking to this person and understanding, is this a good time for them? Can they put in the extra time away from work? What are the demands in their life outside of work that would allow them to do that if they don't have the skill set? And most of the time, we expect someone to just give all of that up. But COVID changed a lot. That people want to be organizations to be respective of their work time as well as their personal time. So I think that organizations have to look at that. How much is someone willing to commit, and then have some clear benchmarks about what it is you want them to have achieved at 30 days, 60 days, and then if it's not, how do you reset? And mutually agree in the beginning what what are the no go type of things that, if both parties don't agree, we can back out of this particular situation. They can go to a different role or back to their other role. But I think that those conversations should be had up front in, like Larissa said, being transparent. We want to give you this opportunity. You haven't had it. Everyone else that we promoted has had experience. So this is what we're willing to do. Now, what are you willing to do? And let's not make it just this special program for people who are underrepresented, because they're
mhm.
extremely talented. And so just put all the cards out there, not be afraid. And I think organizations don't want to look bad. And so you have to have fearless people in HR and operations for sure.
Wow, that's a great one. That's a great one. I know we passed into time. We passed into time blaming it on technology. Let's blame it on technology. And I also wanted to make sure that our guests, our audiences, are set to go. YouTube just decided to do what it wants, what it does best. And I does adverts. I'll take away your time. So, but I know that this session is going to be something that is consistent. It's a series, so it's not going to stop today. I want our listeners to know that we would definitely, yes, we would have more series to talk about diversity. And for in the month of August, we would continue every week, Mondays. We would continue on this promoting diversity in promotion and transfer structure. So August is the month for promotions and transfers when we're looking into diversity. In September, we do have diversity in recruitment. So this one will be looking into external candidates. Now we want to focus inward, look into our internal candidates. So because of our time, I will take some questions from the audience so I can allow our wonderful speakers to have all, to have all the things to go for all the things they're doing. So I have a question here from oh, before I do that, I'll say our listeners, please just subscribe to our YouTube. This is the first episode ever, and I know that you have to subscribe so you can have the notifications when we have new series posted on YouTube. It's going to be live. We're going to bring in experts, and trust me, these gems you're saying, yeah, they're going nowhere. I would make sure I set up another appointment with them so we can tap into their wealth of knowledge. It has been impactful. I've learned a lot. Trust me, when I go to work tomorrow, I'm going to talk more about diversity. They definitely got to know I have some team meetings that there was a program. Okay, so I will take a question. Okay, before I do that, let's see. Yes, thank you very much, Blessing Timotokwe, for the thumbs up. Thank you. And to the question, we see, will there be a recording? Yes, please. There will be a recording of the session. It's live, and it's also live on LinkedIn, so you can watch after the session ends. And on YouTube too, it is recorded, so you can always go back to it. Then one question we have here from our audience is, what is the most challenging aspect of working in a diverse environment? Wow. What is the most challenging aspect of working in a diverse environment? Corina, do
I'm
you
going
want
to
to go
say,
first or
let
Lois?
me answer that,
Let's go.
please. Removing my ego.
Ooh, that's a great one. Wow. I wouldn't
Removing
have
my
thought of that.
ego and that so-called pride. I am not above anybody. I am not below anyone. I want to row with you, not steer. I So yeah, for me, it is definitely removing my ego. Someone may come in that might be younger than me, right? May have just gotten out of college. I might be feeling some kind of way about it because I've been working here all this time and I got the same degrees. What you mean they done came in here and took the position that I want? You know, that's kind of heart wrenching. Or, how about, would you hire someone that came in that may have a hearing impairment and they only sign, but they know the job? Would you do that? So again, for me, it's ego and it's pride, and I don't know everything. More importantly, is this for the common good? Because people do not like change. They don't. Don't come in here, come telling me, especially if you knew what to do or what not to do. But a good way to go about it is let people know, let your people know, or your staff know. Listen, in about 3 months, we're going to start to work towards this. We're going to start to work towards that. That way, it gives them time for it to settle in, and it's more, and they become a little bit more receptive rather than, this is how we gonna do it. I've said it, I've spoken. That's all ego. Don't do that, because it's really not about you. It's about the common good
Hmm.
of the company and the people of which are performing these tasks. And also, last but not least, do any organizations even send out any surveys and ask their people, are y'all all right? Seriously,
Ooh,
is there anything we could possibly do better?
that's a food for thought.
Or
Hmm.
is it just the way I think about it?
Hmm.
Because again, we're going into that selfishness ego thing. And this is the way it should be because why, I'm the director. No, it's not that. It's for the common good. And if we're not for the people performing those tasks, they're the ones that make you look good. So are they happy? Are they content? Because the happier and the content they are, the more productive they're going to be. Thank you for
Mm.
letting me speak.
So, along those points, Larissa, a good point, especially around that last point, are people happy? I think a lot of more advanced organizations are going to be doing climate surveys on a relatively regular cadence so that they can have a pulse of how people are, and they should be anonymous so that they can be fully transparent. Now, what I've seen as one of the largest challenges in the D&I space is coming to grips that D&I, DEI, GEI is all change management. And in many cases, you're challenging people's norms, their values, and that's could be a psychological blow to somebody who has been living in their world with their realities and their realities being challenged. And so, not having supports and not having resources for people to address those challenges and potentially be vulnerable enough to take in this new insights and, to Larissa, to your point, cast their ego aside so that they can learn, as opposed to becoming defensive and resistive to the change that's coming their way. And it may not be a change directed directly at them, but it could be a change to the organization and the organization's culture.
Mm.
And I would say for me, I've heard this at a few different companies, in that we all wanted you until you got here. And I think that because there's not a lot of diversity in Seattle, they have perceptions of what they believe a professional Black American woman should be. And I am very respectful, but there are lines that I won't allow anyone to cross. So the microaggression, um, doesn't really fly with me, and I'm direct and forthright. It's a Texas thing. It's definitely a Black thing, and so that's a cultural clash. Just being in the Pacific Northwest, you often hear Seattle freeze or people are passive aggressive. Well, I don't have time to have a meeting after the meeting to discuss what I didn't like. I'm going to bring it up during the meeting. So that's been a little challenging for me, but I think primarily for my other my other HR business partners and people in HR, because there's a culture in which HR individuals interact, and typically their their entire career has been in HR. Where HR is a second career for me in D&I space. I was in operations in revenue generating positions for the first 10 years of my career. So I bring that into the organization. So I'm used to working with business leaders and having a conversation about the business as someone who understands it. And so the challenge has been for me of trying to translate that back into my HR groups. Another thing with appearance, I unfortunately, because I am from Texas, the big hair, kind of, it's a reflection in growing up in the South. It's a reflection of your parents if you don't look nice going out in public. Anyway, so I get the people feel uncomfortable meeting with me because they don't have makeup on that day, or gee, your lips are really red. So and my response has been, do you want to meet some other day then? So I'm not going to change how I look. And I get that those are micro little jabs, but I am me. So that's their problem. But we're here to do a work. And so more of mine are interpersonal. It's not necessarily the work, but, if I can spend some time in my businesses and, have an office over there, that has worked tremendously well. Or if I travel a lot, then I don't have to see them.
Mm. Wow,
Yeah.
that's great insight over there. Okay, so one thing I need to bring to the notice of everyone, our listeners, is this is a safe space. This is a very good one. It's a safe space. You can tell us whatever you want to tell us. It won't be used against you. But however, I need to bring to your attention that because this is streamed in different platforms, Facebook, Instagram, no, not Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and of course on Twitter. As you might also want to be careful of what you say. Talk as yourself. You may want to disassociate yourself from your organization, but do ask questions that will help your mental health. Ask questions that will help your current situations because our guest speakers here, they're ready to answer your questions. And of course, Larissa also can take in EFE, Employment Assistance Programs for your mental health. She is ready to assist you. So if you have some personal questions,
Ooh. No, I don't do EAP.
you don't do EFE?
No,
Okay.
ma'am.
Well, I can take in some personal questions. I
I'm just saying
definitely
that
I do have.
companies should have EAP
Yeah,
services and or
of
have
course,
a
of course.
directive after each one of their classes or their courses or their webinars or whatever it is that they're giving on implicit
Mm,
biases, unconscious biases, da 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 da, whatever it
yeah.
is, have and make sure that it's a safe space. That's number one. You have to say that let it be rated BF, blame free.
Oh,
The only thing
yeah.
that's required is that you come at 100% authentically
Mm,
you. Okay, and it's gonna take people to get a minute. It's gonna take people a minute to open up and say, okay, this is what I'm dealing with. But it's not just black and white. It's
mm.
gay and straight. It is tall and short. It is if I wear I forget. You know what I mean?
We?
If I'm Muslim, if I'm deaf, if my language, if you can't
Yeah.
really
If you wear
understand
hearing
me,
aid. Mm-hmm.
yeah, if I have a thick accent or whatnot, let the companies represent what America is to be, is allegedly saying to be. Challenge America.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is we're going to go to the next question, but before I do that, I just want to thank our listeners once again. Is this is a recorded session? You can always have it on LinkedIn, and of course on YouTube. I don't know why I'm saying Instagram. Maybe we'll have to work on streaming live on Instagram. Kind of have almost 15,000 followers there, so let's put that to use. But this is a safe space, of course, and organization. We'll talk about organization employment assistance programs some other times. I'm definitely going to do a show on that because it's one of those avenues that help grow and also provide mental health sessions, mental health opportunities, career development to their own employees. But let's go to the next questions, and I believe this is from okay. This is from one of our audience, no name, just I think this is a channel now. So you said a question, you left a question that has to do with interview questions. I'll just read it. It said, is working on this person, I'm trying to be careful. I'm not sure if it's a she, he, or they. So this person is working on a list of questions that he wants to ask candidates during an interview process and would like to give them insight into the complete level of commitment to DEIB. How can he go about it?
I One of the things I think is important is to ask, what is the turnover? What's the attrition rate of non-European American employees?
Mm,
I think that's important. I think also asking, and this is something that candidates can do. If you just Google the company's name and put "an EEO lawsuits," you can find a whole host of issues, potential issues with the company based on like litigation. And do the company name, the capital AND, and lawsuit or discrimination, and see what comes up. I think that that's really important. And then just asking, what's the diversity of your recruiting team, your HR team?
mm,
Those
mm,
kinds of things I think are important. And companies give a lot of money, but what is that internal movement like? You can ask how many people were promoted last year, or in my work group. What does that make up? How do I get exposure? Recruiters should be able to answer those questions.
mm, mm,
So I'm clear on the question. Is the question stating that this is a potentially a HR professional? They are looking to create a list of questions to ask during interviews that can get to. Are they trying to ask the interviewer, or are they asking the candidate questions on the candidate's perspective of DEI?
From the question, the way the question is phrased, I want to believe this is an individual that is going to be a candidate to ask the interviewers questions to get to know and understand their DEIB commitments.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm gonna take a page out of Danielle's book. Is just be straight up in front, up front with it. Ask them directly what things are is your company doing to show its commitment to DEI, and ask for
Mm,
specifics, and then ask for results and outcomes, and or projected results and outcomes with a timeline. So it's easy for a company to say, "Yeah, we started this group. You know, what is that group?" You know, and dig deeper. Have follow up questions. Okay, so what is that group's goal? Can you tell me about what they've done so far? Do they have anything in the works for the next 6 months to the year? I mean, the candidate should have realistic expectations. You know, if it's a large company, it's going to be more like turning the Titanic than it is turning a jet ski. So not going to turn on a dime. But if it is a large company, they still have to make, you know, a concerted effort and consciously include DEI in their everyday work. So
mm,
they should, all of the recruiters should have some type of understanding of what the organization's policies and practices, as we talked about earlier, on DEI are. And if they don't, they should be willing to offer that information in a follow up email.
mm. Thank you
And I
very
would
much
think,
for the
and I would
information.
think twice about, an organization where the recruiter has to send a follow up email because they don't know. That's a huge red flag.
Oh
To your
yeah.
point, Danielle, you know, a lot of times HR is dominated by white women, so you know, there may be a case where that may be the only thing they're aware of is the women diversity. But to your point, that's part of the problem in that talent acquisition space is that there is not representation in those spaces as
Mm.
well.
Yeah, they say that. Okay, just I need to, and the news just came to me now and said that our series is going to be held every other Monday. Pardon me for that mistake. It's every other Monday, so it's going to be the next 2 weeks now, not the next coming Monday. Thank you very much for the information. Okay, so Larissa, we've been talking about what's the most challenging aspect of working in a diverse environment. We talked about which you already answered. Then we also looked into topic about a candidate asked what questions they can ask during an interview that can talk and get to understand the level of commitment of the organization when we're talking about DEIB. Because of our time, I'll go straight to we have two more questions left. I'll go straight to the third question, which is what are some of the national organizations you have partnered with to find diverse talents? So now I believe this person is in an HR and wants to know ways that he can find or she can find, please pardon my pronouns, that he or she or they can find to get to get diverse candidates. So I'm going to paint that question for now and go to last questions, which is very critical. And this question is: what criteria should a corporation look for when hiring a DEI consultant? Yeah, we have DEI consultants in the building. Everyone here is a consultant and they're doing a great job in their own industries. So, what are the criteria the organization or the corporation should look into when they are hiring a DEI consultant?
I'm
I think
And
sorry.
Larissa, I believe you're muted.
Yeah, I gotta sign off.
Okay, so we are going to let Larissa go. Thank you very much for this time. Thank you for being with us. It's a pleasure to have you. You've been very insightful, and I can say I do have a sheet of paper. I wrote some information because you guys have been giving me so much information, and I believe that the audience also have seen this to be very impactful. We have people saying thank you for this, so we appreciate you, Larissa. I would follow up with you after this after the end of the show, and we will just let you go. Thank you very much.
Yeah, but what I will say on my leaving, we're talking about organizations, but we also need to talk about at some point in time um, education and the people that are being hired in education. why they're being hired, and what's happening with that, and is it working?
Mm.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you
Bye,
very
everybody.
much.
Such a
Bye.
pleasure. Bye bye. Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, so now back to our question, which is very critical. And the question goes, what criteria should a corporation or an organization look for when hiring a DEI consultant?
Well,
Who goes first?
that's a big question. I think depends on what they're looking for their D&I person or consultant to do. If the company is a federal contractor, where there are some requirements for that, they need to look at someone who's maybe had experience in doing that. I think if they're looking for it just from a workforce standpoint, that's a different criteria. If they're looking for a D&I consultant to help them integrate diversity so it addresses their business strategy, that can be a different person. I think the organization needs to be clear about what they are looking for and where their commitment is. And I say commitment in the sense of, are they comfortable looking internally at themselves and why they aren't in this situation? It shouldn't have taken in 2020 a 9-minute video to make Americans realize that, gee, maybe something's wrong in our companies. They honestly, they already knew something was wrong. And so I think that I am definitely biased in the sense of, if I were hiring someone, I would want to hire someone who has some corporate experience. They've worked in an organization, so they understand those intricacies of how policies versus practices happen. If they don't, if they're only been a consultant or they've only come from academia, they can train a lot, but you're not going to educate a generation out of being biased and having racist organizations. You're not. You're going to have to understand the structure and the practices and how you address those sort of unwritten ways in which organizations do things. I think that's really important. And then I think the organization should also consider, if a consultant is not interested in partnering with an operations person as well as an HR person, then you wouldn't want to hire them. Now, if HR wants to hire a consultant and then wants to be that gatekeeper and kind of limit that D&I, person's exposure, that program is going to fail. That's my perspective.
I would say, to Danielle's point, there are so many different parts of this work. There is not just one area. The goal for D&I is to be part of the DNA of an organization. So depending on the results of your own internal assessment, where your priorities are, that's where you should start with your consultant. I would also say that in order to make sure that you're doing what you need to do from a D&I perspective, do not. Sorry, my doorbell just went off. In order to make sure that you're choosing the right people, don't go into it with a have budget allocated for it. Don't choose a consultant based on finances alone, because you're gonna need to pay for this work, and don't try to haggle consultants down. Pay them what they're worth so you can get what you pay for. The one thing, and Danielle, you talked about this, is having corporate experience. I would offer a different perspective, is making sure that people just looking at the scale, because there are some large, very, very large nonprofits that experience some of those same nuances of practice versus policy. That's where I first experienced the practice versus policy.
And when I said corporate experience, nonprofits or nonprofit corporations, but I mean working in a workplace versus only training. Some of that.
No, there's a perfect example of like the nuances in language, and we just had a small example of the nuance in our experiences on what her definition of corporate was versus what I received it, and understanding the differences and making sure that there's a space for us to give that feedback, to receive it, and then move forward. A lot of times you don't want your consultants to shame. You want people to bring this information to light, and then you want them to move on to the actions of how do we make this thing better, right?
Absolutely.
So I think, to your point, I think that's what you look for as a consultant that can do exactly that. That they have the humility, they have the perspective, and that they have the communication skills to be able to effectively understand what they're sending and what the client is receiving.
Mm-hmm. Wow, those are great points over there. To add to it, I would just say that it depends on what the organization is trying to achieve. What is the goal? What is the objective? Why do you need a DEI consultant? Those are the things that organization need to look in. When you get that figured out, then you know what kind of consultant you're looking for. There are different experts, different areas that DEI consultant focus on. Why some are advisors, some are implementers. So you need to be able to identify the purpose. Okay, so because of our time, we'll quickly take the last question before we round off this show this week. It's been a wonderful session, and personally, I enjoyed it. So, our last question is, let's see. Okay, this is from YouTube, and it is: what are the national organizations you have partnered to find that diverse time?
That list is too long to speak
Right.
of. But again, there's organizations for every, I won't say every, but for most groups that you're looking for. It's just a matter of looking. A lot of this work is about connecting and access to communities so that you can gain perspective. And you just have to put in the work. A consultant can help you do it because they've been going over this list. They probably have a spreadsheet on this is what I need for you. I mean, your assessment says you need these 6 people, these groups of people to be elevated into your organization. Great. I want to make sure that it's clear is diversity recruitment is not selecting people because they're diverse. It's about increasing your pipeline so that it is equitable for the candidates to move into those or achieve those roles. It's not about making hiring decisions based off of certain demographics. So it's a really good question. You have to, and you cannot. A lot of times, talent acquisition they'll cast a broader net, but if you're in the same ocean, you're going to get the same fish. You have to start going to different bodies of water and potentially do spearfishing versus net fishing.
Absolutely. And I have to just give a shout out to people who are diversity recruiters, because we always say the best recruiters can find a needle in a haystack. Well, if you're a diversity recruiter, you can find the eye of the needle in the haystack, because they are absolutely the best of the best, because they know how to drill down and find that one or two candidate in a sea of people that everything's equal. They have the same education. They have the same experience. Now go find a diverse one. Definitely diversity recruiters are the best of the best.
Wow, those are great answers. By the way, Bavarde Talent Solutions is a recruiting agency that focuses on finding diverse candidates. So if you need to find diverse candidates, we are here to help you. We look beyond the physical. Anyways, we look beyond the mental physical also. We look beyond the competition, and we'll find what you need. We'll find those skills you need, not just in a diverse candidate, but in a qualified diverse candidate. It's about the quality that we bring. So if your organization need assistance in finding those diverse candidates, please hit me up on LinkedIn or on Facebook. Any method goes. I would connect you to the team of this wonderful teams of diverse recruiters, and we will help you find your next diverse candidate. Thank you very much for the sessions. Thank you to our speakers. Thank you to Kwabanam. Thank you to Danielle and Larissa. She left because she had some meeting. Thank you very much to the audience for listening. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. I never knew I was saying this. But please subscribe down below and turn on the notification bell so you can know when we have our next series. Again, we'll be having this series every other Monday. Thank you very much and do have a blessed day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care.